Hey, welcome back to Unfiltered, Unspoken. And of course, we are bringing the life experience to you. We have a special guest, George Brooks, and George has been living with a mental illness since 7. He has lived through abuse, weight loss, surgery, child obesity, many health issues, addiction, divorce trauma, custody battles, raising a son with mental illness and poverty. George is now a CEO, and he has multiple business ventures bringing awareness to mental health illness. He's a life coach, public speaker, writer, and producer. I don't know, George doing so much, so I hope I didn't forget anything. George, you are out here giving it to people. We truly appreciate everything that you're doing to bring awareness. I have been watching you for over 2 months now. You are in our chat group, and we definitely truly appreciate you bringing awareness to mental health issues and being transparent, especially as a Black male. So we want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
So I'm going to bring you up so you can briefly introduce yourself. I've said some things, but you may have a lot more to tell the audience. And then after that, Sid is going to kick it off.
All right. Well, my name is George Brooks. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, but I now reside in Dallas, Texas. Currently in my hometown for the holidays and working on some advocacy cases here, trying to build my nonprofit. I started it after about an 8-year period of addiction, poor mental health. Went through a traumatic divorce, went through 2 custody issues that were pretty severe and traumatic, and was at rock bottom to the point where I really had to look up to see the gutter. And one day I just decided to change. I was at a point where I felt as though I could take either death or life, and I chose life. And I contacted a friend at the time who was not my fiance, and she was integral in getting me back on a routine and helping build me up to this point. So, with that, I took the scars, the wounds that I had, and let them scar up so that I could use them to help others. And that's what I try to do. I believe in using my trauma to help others and make others aware, because what I really don't want is to see another Black man in the position that I found myself in terms of dealing with the stigma of mental health, lack of resources, disparity of care, because I feel like most Black men out here have some unresolved issues and some trauma. That's why we see the things and instances that we do out of our Black men, out of my brothers. So that's what I endeavor to do, and I'm really glad that you guys have me on today to discuss it and bring further awareness. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Thank you for being here. Um, Now, take us through, the first time that you might have experienced abuse, trauma, and or caught wind of mental illness.
Well, about 8, 7, I started noticing it was brought to my attention by siblings and family that I didn't quite process emotions the same way as other people. I was overly emotional. I had mood swings and things like that. So that happened about 8, 7. And over the years, it just became more and more prevalent. In terms of abuse, it was mostly emotional and verbal abuse from my father that was really, really bad. It would happen out in public. It would happen at school. And it had me to the point where I didn't talk. People thought I was mute because I was afraid to say anything around him or to him. So that had an effect on me coming up. And that was hard. And as a result of my mental illness, I developed an eating addiction. So I was obese. I weighed about 300 pounds in the eighth grade, and that itself brought its own ridicule and issues. So adolescence was hard. I was entering the phase where I was coming into a fractured home. I went through a period. My father was incarcerated for a couple of years. That was difficult. And into my early 20s, that continued. And as a result of the mental illness and what I went through, I was very introverted. My mood swings were getting worse and worse. And I got married about age 23, and I'm now divorced. But me and my ex-wife are friends, and that was hard because I was not or unaware of what the scope of my mental illness was. So about 2005, I was officially diagnosed as bipolar, with PTSD and dissociative identity disorder. So that started about good. Wow, it's longer than 10 years. It took years for me to find a cocktail of medications that worked, and I've just found that in the last year. So it's been a long time. It's been a big struggle. It's been very hard. It's been very difficult. Um, but my recovery was something that I had to do, not for my kids, not for my wife at the time, not for anybody, but for myself. So I now realize that everything was tied into my mental health. And even if I didn't have chronic diagnosable conditions, I would still have to address my mental health. So I want to spread awareness about what's going on in the Black community in terms of our attitude toward mental illness, in terms of the stigma that we have toward mental illness, and ways to help it. Because I think we as Black people, as a diaspora, are hurting ourselves by not addressing it. And to some people, I have to put it this way: not dealing with your mental health is keeping us broke. It's keeping our communities broken. It's keeping crime in our neighborhoods. It's keeping the crabs in a bucket mentality. And that's what I'm fighting for through my nonprofit Meta Association to try to correct that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, um, going back to that, I assume it's because, growing up, no one around you, for one, took mental illness serious enough, or two, had the resources to, um, to even help you, knowing that they probably needed the help themselves. So, um, what can we do as parents, or future parents, or even aunties, uncles, to press the issue or provide support to those in our life that need it?
Right. Well, let me say this. My parents were great as far as getting me help. I did not have to deal with the old, antiquated way of thinking in terms of you don't need this, that's for white folks. My folks got me help. And it was fractured coming up because of instances of poverty and not having insurance, but having to buy medication. And I'm also a type 1 diabetic and have heart failure, so I had all that going on. But my parents were good. They were really progressive thinkers at the time. But in terms of what others can do to help facilitate better mental health care is educate yourself. uh, be compassionate toward people. Don't ridicule. Don't judge. Don't speak on things that you may be ignorant of to people because you don't know how that could affect them. Try to understand that it's an illness that they cannot control. They can manage it, but they can't necessarily control it. They will have moments of, if they're compliant, they'll have moments where they're okay, and they have moments where they'll get sick. The problem is with mental health, we neglect the health part of it. And I one thing I advocate for is trying to treat mental health like we do our physical problems. I've heard bipolarism described as the cancer of mental health, and if we look at it that way, that'll help. But I've run into a lot of issues with family, not understanding, making it difficult, undermining care. That's a huge one. Telling people they don't need their medication, telling people they don't need therapy, they don't need this, they don't need that, they just need to go to church more. I've dealt with all that. And my personal experience with it was the school system. The school system was horrible as far as helping children with any kind of mental illness. They were totally ignorant and, in fact, almost insidious in how they dealt with it. So that's one thing that I want to champion change for. Another thing is dealing with the church. We all know how the church kind of used to be. And I say used to be because I'm very encouraged by the fact that I see many churches being a lot more open to discussing mental health. That makes me so happy because I had people trying to drag me to God to cure my mental illness, and you can't drag anyone to God. It has to happen on their own. And I found my relationship with God and realized it and cultivated it on my own. So I dealt with a lot of that. I dealt with the ridicule. Well, I had a relative tell me one time, why do you want to be bipolar? And that was just one of the most asinine statements I ever heard. But, it just let me know about the ignorance towards mental health in our community and the resistance to change. So with that, I fight against it. And that's why I'm so transparent in my narrative and what I do.
Awesome. Now, I know that, just in your reach, you have, you know, touched many people at this point, but have you gotten through to anyone in your family at this point, or outside of your parents, anybody that supported you? Have you gotten through to, anybody that was just very hard on it, reluctant at first, but you finally made that breakthrough?
Funny thing is, I'm estranged from my family. When I went through recovery, those relationships soured because they were toxic. And I'm of the mind that when you have toxic people, I don't care who it is, I get rid of them. I don't care if you're blood. I don't care if you're grandmama, mama. If you're toxic, I can't do that. And that's one thing I tell people: don't be afraid to sever relationships, because when you go through recovery, whether it's because I went through recovery for mental health and addiction, and when you go through recovery, people change. Um, you're going to lose a lot of relationships. You'll gain some new ones, but you will lose some, and some that are close to you. And that's just part of the recovery process, because you endeavor to no longer be that broken person. And in that, you realize that a lot of your relationships were not only toxic but codependent. So once you sever those ties, you're going to lose people. I'm not going to sit up here and say you're going to lose your whole family, but there will be relationships that will change and be altered. But so in terms of me getting people on board or getting people to really kind of turn the corner, that really never happened. It's just that the people that were in my life and in my life now that I value always, I think, really understood me and understood my mental illness, because I've always been able to talk about it. I've always been able to articulate what's going on, which is a blessing, because many of us with a mental illness are not able to do so. But in terms of actually changing people's minds, I don't know. Uh, I don't know. I can't say. All I know is that I've encountered people that have been in my life for a short period of time. I look at it as God placing people in my life that He wants me to be around. My faith is important, but the thing is, you're probably not going to change a lot of people's minds. Unfortunately, that's the way it is until we destigmatize and decriminalize mental health, especially in the Black community and especially among Black men.
So I have a really quick question. I want to know, and the audience probably wants to know as well. How are you able to manage having a mental issues, and helping others with mental issues? How are you able to balance those things and to give advice and help others when you're going through your own mental issues?
Because the best person to help someone is someone that's been there and someone that's going through it. I'm not. I have no problem with people with degrees, but that's fine and good. But you can only help people so much unless you've gone through it. And I manage my health. I work hard at my health, even to what I eat. I know what I eat. If I eat poorly, that can affect my mental health. Being around negative people, I don't do that. I stopped watching the news years ago. It's toxic. Um, I'm careful about what I consume on social media. So I work hard to manage it, and it's been a lifelong endeavor, and I'll always be in recovery. Recovery never ends. So I have to work at it every day. But I use that and what I've learned and what I've been through to try to help people. And it gives me purpose. So it's hard to manage, but it's no different than being a physician with a health issue. You manage your own, and it helps give you insight into helping people. And that's really what it's really been a blessing to me, because I can empathize with people. I think it makes me better suited to assessing what they need and being able to address those needs. I have a certificate in mental health first aid. I educate myself on mental health, current trends, current laws, things like that. I'm involved in real boots on the ground advocacy. I don't sit behind a desk. I get out there and do the work as a CEO. But just the thing is, I just try to make it work. I pray every morning. I try to keep my faith. I try to keep myself grounded. I try to stay humble. And through that, I've been able to help a lot of people. And that's something I'm really proud of and happy about.
Love it. I love it. And you've explained it because I feel the exact same way. How you've explained it is we all personally go through this. That's why we're able to help. So I love to ask the question so that folks can understand. We help you because we've been through this and we can give you advice based on what we have been through to help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, out of every struggle that you've experienced thus far, whether it had been the mental health, whether it had been addiction, whether it had been other health issues, which do you feel has been the hardest to endure?
Fighting for my children. That's by far been the most difficult thing. Um, Fighting for my oldest son, who's 17. I've been having to fight for him all his life, and I was granted custody. Uh, I was, to be honest, because the mother was deemed unfit, and I had a lot of custodial interference. I've shed tears, blood, and sweat, literally, um, to fight for my son. And he's about to be 18 on November 30th. So he's doing better. He's bipolar. He was untreated for a long time because of the mother's interference, and that's been a struggle. So that's been the most difficult thing. And also, when I went through my divorce, my other son, I had to deal with custody issues for him, and had a really deep fear of not being able to see him. But I worked that out. Me and my ex-wife had a bad divorce, but we're friends now, and she's a great mother. She's a good friend. Uh, I'm proud of her, and she's a great parent.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. So glad to hear that. Um, let's see. Going back to, I believe you said your first marriage in 23. Um, what throughout everything you were going through at the time, in what ways did you see the kind of rearing of all of your issues? What were some of the biggest problems that you all suffered? And what kind of brought it to the end?
I think what happened was that I didn't understand my mental health situation at the time. I wasn't diagnosed until I about age 25, 26. So I lived much of my life in a daze. I had untreated bipolarism, so I was going through the highs and the lows and the psychotic breaks and the memory losses and all those things, and trying to work and function, and that never worked out. And as far as my marriage goes, I think that I degraded to a point where I wasn't what she needed to be. I think she wasn't what I needed to be at the time. I think we weren't ready for it. I think we were both immature, but we were married for 16 years. We have a beautiful son, and we have a friendship. So um, when a marriage ends, it's never one person's fault. So I took accountability for it. I apologized to her for my feeling in the marriage, and like I said, we had to reconcile and do that. But it was a matter of getting married too soon, having untreated mental health, having a lot of interference, having a lot of mess around, and we just weren't ready. And I try to tell my kids, wait till you're about 30 to get married. Don't rush into it, because if you rush into it, it's probably not going to last. And as cynical as that may sound, it's the truth, because the data backs me up. But it was very, very, very difficult, very difficult, um, very difficult to deal with what I was going through at the time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of folks, and I'm gonna, you have to take accountability within the marriage. It's not just one
Right.
person. Even like what I went through, and I'm not going to talk about it because this is your shine. I had to think back about a lot of things and take accountability for things that I should have did, or me walking away, or me leaving. Certain aspects. So I'm glad you brought that up, George. It's very important to take accountability within a marriage, and it's not just one person. It's both. It's both, and we all make choices within the marriage. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I hope folks are really listening to what you just said.
Yeah, and that's why I started my men's support group on Facebook, Meta Men's Mentality. It's
Hmm.
specifically for Black men who've gone through divorce, who've gone through custody issues. I want to create a safe place where we can come and congregate and discuss things and heal and process. So that's why I created that group, because oftentimes in divorce, the man is not thought of as far as what he's going through emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
especially Black men, because we go through so much, so much insecurity, so much doubt when our marriage ends, so much fear, so much trepidation, and so much pain. And it's never addressed. I never see it discussed. I never see it looked at. Um, yeah, in terms of economics and how it affects the man economically, yeah, but what about his spirit? What about his heart? What about his pain? What about his loss? So I want to try to address that as a way to help my brothers heal, because once we heal, then we can have those relationships. We can be successful co-parents and run and be leaders in our communities without having that baggage,
Mm-hmm.
having that on us. We don't need any more albatrosses on our neck than what we have. So that's what I endeavor to do.
Yeah, and we also don't need folks trespassing in our relationship, because it seems like with us, it's always someone trespassing, someone always interfering. If it's not the, and it's especially the mother. I don't know what it is
Right. It's
about
the
the mother.
in-laws.
It's the in-laws. It's the and not just the mother, but the family in a whole. And they never understand truly the entirety of the situation and what's
Yeah.
going on. And if they really knew the truth, they would not be taking up for their family member the
Right,
way
and like my in-laws, they never really cared about getting to know me or anything like that. They,
hmm
they kind of had their minds made up, and it was just so. I mean, I'm just got to be honest about it.
Yeah.
Now my fiance has a great family.
hmm
We've gotten to know each other, but it just wasn't, as far as my first marriage, it just wasn't meant to be. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to accept that and just move on and go on. That doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with your ex-spouse, but it's not going to be the relationship that you necessarily embodied.
hmm
It's going to change, and your relationships are going to change, and that's just a fact of life, regardless of mental illness.
hmm
So when you throw a mental illness on top of that, and becomes compounded, you've got a recipe for a lot of disaster if you're not careful.
hmm Yep. I agree. So no trespassing. Keep
Right.
others out of your marriage, your relationship. It's about you and no outsiders.
Right, and
Protect
that goes for
your
parenting
relationship.
too, because we have a
Yep.
lot of custodial interference from grandparents and things like that. And you didn't help make that kid. If you were not in there in that moment when that happened, then you need to kind of,
Mind
unless
your
you have
business.
to the child, stay out of it.
Mind your business.
Mind your business. Stay
Mind your business.
And we got a history of not doing it.
Yeah, we do, and I think and being transparent, Black families are damaged. If you look at a lot of it, the males are not in the household. So I commend all the brothers that are there with their kids, with their fam, trying to make it work, no matter what it is that you're involved with your child, because a lot of Black families are broken, and if they're not broken, it's a hostile parent. So that hostile parent is causing rift between the parenting of the child. So as you said, co-parenting is very important, and it's how do you create that relationship. And as a culture, we need to stick together.
Right.
Co-parent. If it's over, it's over. The interest is the child and how you make it better for the child. And once the child sees the disturbance of two parents fighting, you're traumatizing that child, which is
Right.
creating greater issues.
And that's one thing I try to address through my work through Meta Association and in my public speaking. I try to discuss it. I talk quite a bit about my situation, unique instances I've been in, things I've been through very openly and honestly. But one thing that I notice also that's destroying the Black family and corroding our infrastructure as a society are secrets in the family. We got to start. We can't do that because it becomes generational. And I've known of families that have secrets, whatever they may be, that have gone for generations and do nothing but scar their family up. We have to learn to communicate. We have to embrace therapy. We have to embrace help. The whole attitude of thinking, "Oh, that's for white folks. That's not a Black folks problem." That's dead.
It's no color problem. Like
Yeah, it's a no collar problem. And the thing about the pandemic that it's a tragedy, and it affected all of us, is that it did affect all of us. It didn't matter what color you were affected by it. And I think of mental health in the same way. Mental health is sort of a pandemic because it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care what color you are. And you know, it's hard fighting the this our diaspora because many of us don't even see mental illness as real. We invalidate it. We invalidate the feelings of those going through it. We don't have compassion for them. You can say things about someone with a mental illness where if you said that about a person with cancer, you get canceled, which is another thing, made up thing that's trash. But you know, we have to fight a lot. We have to fight the stigma. We have to fight the ridicule. We have to fight the fear, the misunderstanding. And the only way we can do that is get people to offer their testimony, to get people to see it's not just you. That person went through that. That's what I'm going through. If they're okay, then I can be okay.
And then again, you seen I put a post up about that, and I always talk about families protecting the abuser while the victim is left to scar. You can't stop protecting the abuser when you're hurting. The victim is trying to heal, but what I love about this new generation is they are voicing themselves. So
Right.
hopefully that will help stop the generational curses. And I'm gonna chime in because what I love about Sid is she has a voice on her and she speaks her mind too.
Right.
And you know, a lot of the generations after us, they're speaking their mind. So you know, I commend y'all, even you Sid and your friends, the folks that you have following you. Y'all are very voiceful, and the power of the voice. If those voices were heard going through tough times that we went through, oh my God, it probably would be so many changes.
Right.
I'm telling you, it would be so many changes. I mean, just from the protests, everything the youth getting out. So, you know, stop protecting abusers. I
Yeah.
mean, and we're here, all of us are on the screen to share those life experiences so that folks are not going through traumas anymore and they can stand up and speak and face the traumas that they've been through. Hey Sid, you want to chime in?
Oh, I wanted to go back to pretty much where you touched on outside of, getting financial matters in order, the other feelings that are surrounding, divorce for men. Um, what did you experience? Because when to agree with you, when people think of, of marriage, or excuse me, of divorce, we think, it's not always happy, but somebody's feeling like they, feeling big in the situation, or, it was because of the man and he don't care anyway. He been doing what he's doing anyway. But yes, nobody ever takes into account a man's feelings, and, a one that actually took part in the sanctity of marriage, wanted to be married and actually felt a way that that marriage was, no longer existing. So, what did you experience just from a man's point of view? How did you feel at that time? What changes were you taken through? How did that roller coaster, what those hills look like?
I grieved. It's like I experienced the loss of a loved one in the sense of them not being alive anymore. I grieved for a long time. There was a tremendous amount of fear in terms of what do I do now? Okay, will I see my kid? The economic thing is really the last thing that a man thinks about. Um, if he says that what he's trying to do is not admit that he's hurt. So we hide our pain, but there was loss, there was grieving, there was pain, there was sorrow, there was relief in a strange way, but there were so many emotions, and we don't address them as men because I didn't know how to express it at that time. And all that time going through recovery, it was very hard. But I think a lot of us men, when we go through divorce, have periods of insecurity where we question ourselves. Well, what did we do? Was I not good enough? Was this? Was this that? But we don't address it, and that's why I think it's that's why I really want to create safe places for us to try to heal, because I think it's going to help our communities.
I definitely do agree. And to kind of bounce off of what Demetrius said earlier, I do think, this generation, it is, they pretty much, we are raising kids to be very like emotionally intact, be able to speak for themselves, you know, know the gentle balance of what needs to be going on, know what's right and what's wrong, in the smallest of ways and the most nuanced of ways. So I do feel like there will be a shift, you know further moving on, when these kids start moving into adulthood. You can even see it in the politicians now, even the white progressive politicians. They don't talk to anybody crazy about what they believe in. So
Right.
I definitely do, believe in, if we get it going at the ground level, we can really make some change in the future.
Yeah, and we become a very vocal society now, especially with the advent of social media, where everybody has an opinion. We just have to make sure that we're careful in how we express that. Um, Freedom of speech does not make you free from repercussions, and freedom of speech is fine until somebody says something you don't like. So I applaud the fact that young people nowadays are expressing themselves, but they still need to be guided in terms of how they express themselves and the side effects of that and what it may cause, especially in terms of mental health. You have a lot of cyberbullying. You may have instances where people uh, ridicule and shame people. But I am happy because I have a 17-year-old, a 12-year-old. I'm a soon to be step parent of a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, and an 18-year-old. So I've been living with them for the past 4 years. So I'm pretty attuned to how this generation works, and I'm very proud of them. But they just still need our guidance. They still need our tutelage, and it's our responsibility to continue to guide them into adulthood. And we have to realize that 18 doesn't mean you know everything or
Yep.
anything. So parenting is a lifelong endeavor.
Hmm.
It does not stop when your child hits a certain age, a certain point, because they will always need you. And if those of us that were lucky to have our parents for a long time, we should consider ourselves blessed, especially if we have a good relationship. Both my parents are gone, and I'm estranged from my family, so it's kind of just me. So I want people to make sure that you develop healthy relationships with your family because that can help fortify you. But as far as this new generation, I'm very impressed, but they still need a lot of work.
Yeah, they do, and that's why it's always good. If you notice, most of the um the generations after us, they have mentors. They look up to us. I have a lot of youth, and they that look up to me, and that's why it's important how we do things. We guide them, not to shape how they're saying things, but
Right,
to
right.
encourage them to express themselves. So that's the importance of what we're doing as well. We show them grounds on how to move, and it shaping everything together. It makes them powerful in another way, in another sense. So I think a lot of the youth are always looking up to us, so that's why we have to be careful and mindful what we do and how we do things.
Yeah,
So
when my oldest son was about 12, he
uh,
put because he doesn't call me dad. He doesn't call me. He's been calling me old man since he was 6. So he came to me one day about age 12. He was like, "Old man, you know something?" Yes, son. I don't really listen to what you say. What do you mean? I look at what you do. So we have to exemplify the morals and behaviors that we want our children to imbue. We can talk to we're blue in the face, but they look at what we do. They look at how we respond. And if we're messy, they're gonna be messy. So if you see a messy child, you probably got a messy parent. And we have to try to live better lives because people are looking at what we do, not necessarily what we say. And you can see it on social media. Someone can really tell a lot about themselves and disclose a lot about themselves if you look at their posts. You can't hide who you are, especially from your children. And I learned this. My children probably know me as well as anybody. But that's why we have to make sure that we are right in our behavior, what we show them and what we guide them, because they are the future. They are the present. And we have to be cautious and careful about that.
but I mean, even if we're cautious and cautious and careful, peer pressure will sometimes overpowers
True.
everything that we do. So, that's why we speak a lot about how people are posting on social media, how celebrities are posting or saying or rapping, because they influence our youth and, the generations after generation. So, we
Which
you can be the best parent in the world and send your
right.
out in society, and peer pressure will overturn everything that you have worked for.
Yeah, and that happens in a marriage too, because you can do everything right in a marriage and it's still in, because people change over years,
Yep.
and people need to realize that marriage is not easy,
Nope.
especially not nowadays. It's not,
Nope.
and people, a lot of people who've never been married go into it with this view of it, of what it is. It's work.
It's a
Because
lot of work.
yeah, and people think, well, you get married where you're set. No, when you get married, you're still growing. You're still getting to know a person, and sometimes that doesn't work out. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily mean that anyone has to be ridiculed or blamed for it. It just is what it is.
Mhm.
And as far as raising children, yes, you can do the best you. It's same with children. Really, you can do the best you can raising them, but really, they're their own person. They're going to make their own decisions, and we can't
Mhm.
control that. The only thing we can control in life is how we react to certain situations and how we react to people. We cannot control people. We can try to influence them, but if they're not ready or if they don't want to take what we're trying to impart upon them, we can do nothing about that. All we can
Yep.
do is be accountable for ourselves.
I agree, and I was telling someone, I was like, I don't. If I get married again, I don't want to go to a marriage counselor. Whoever I'm dating, we need to go to a therapist, because I want to know whomever I'm dealing with their deepest, darkest secrets from childhood. And I want them to know my deepest, darkest secrets from childhood. Skip the marriage counseling, we need a therapist, because I need to know how to deal and cope with whomever I'm dealing with life traumas, because their life traumas is going to affect their adult decisions. And if we don't understand it and they don't address it, we're going to have issues, and that's where the mental issue pieces come into. So I mean, people are so focused on marriage counseling, and they're really not getting to know their significant others deep down, because some people are so damaged and they don't want to talk about it, that they're damaged to the point that they will destroy any relationship or
Right.
anything that they touch.
Self sabotage. And the thing
Yep.
is, with marriage, the problem is a lot of people have those red flags but choose to ignore them for whatever reason. And one thing that I advise people to do is when you're selecting a mate, courting is a process. Okay, getting married is building a relationship with someone. So look at their relationships with their family. If they don't have a good relationship with their family, they may have difficulty adjusting to getting married. Not saying that they can't have a good relationship with you and your family that you create, but they may have difficulty adjusting. They may have difficulty understanding things, especially if their family isn't close. So you have to be prepared for that as well. I'm not saying that people can't have a good marriage, but you have to work at it, and it's not easy.
No.
So, and the same with raising kids. I can tell you from experience, it ain't easy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. My son, my 12-year-old's in the next room. When I'm done with this, we're going to play chess. And I'm
Mhm.
grateful for that because I had to work for it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and we all on here have kids, so we all
yeah.
we understand. We
And it's
understand.
difficult being a black man fighting for your kid because you run into so many problems. It's almost though as though the system does not want black men in the home. They don't want black men influencing their children. They don't want black men raising their children based on my experience. Um, it's just been a journey. It's too litigious and too long to get into. I may write a book about it one day, but it's rough being a black father out here and you're really trying to do for your kid, and you also have to deal with the stigma of people thinking somehow you're less than the mother, and you're not. Don't I say this to all the men listening: if you're going through a custody issue, never let the child's mother make you think that she has any more right to your child than you do. She doesn't. The law
Boom.
will not necessarily give her custody. I'm proof of that. Just do right, do what you can, be a good father, try to be a good person, because that's what your child is going to remember. Whatever is being told to them growing up, once they get, because I mean, whatever's told them growing up is going to fade away once they get into their own relationships and have their own children. So try not to worry about that. Try to stay calm. Try to be solutions oriented. Try to be right in your action. And that's the best thing you can do for your child.
And I agree with you because I remember I was telling you earlier, when I was little, just banging, "Daddy, Daddy." My mom would tell me to go, and it created a rift between my dad and I. And I think about 12, I was thrown on him, and he was already living a life, you know. So dads do give up. Like I really honestly, you can't be mad at a father that's continuously trying to fight for their child, and they're going through this abuse trying to be a part of their child. At some point, a lot of men are going to give up, and
They have to. They
they're
have
going to
to.
live their life because it's abuse. It's a women and men. If you're doing that, stop.
Because
You
what's going to
are
happen?
it's abuse.
That child is going to resent you.
Yeah, it's abuse.
That child is going to have a problem with you. You're going to be the one that don't see the grandkids. You're going to be the one that doesn't get the phone calls because that child is going to realize, and they realize at a young age, but they can't say anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's one thing that we need to change. So, you know, I urge women that are doing that to stop and think about your child.
But
And,
even men too. Even
and
men
me
too.
too. I mean, and yeah, it goes both ways. If you're a man and you're not doing for your child, I can't respect that. That's one thing that disgusts me. A man that makes a child and just is not accountable for them.
Mm-hmm.
I have a real problem with that, and I've encountered some people in my personal life where I've been very vocal about that. And turns out the things I warned them about as far as not having relationships with their children, it's come to pass. It really
Mm-hmm.
has. And that's sad. And but the thing is, I feel for the men that really want to be good fathers. And because a man does not have to be with you to be a father. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be in a relationship to co-parent. It's good if you can have that, but you know, the majority of people don't. But the thing is, I hurt for fathers who go through custody battles because I know that pain, I know that loss, I know that longing, I know that uncertainty, I know that fear, and I want to try to help that because I think in the end it'll help the children and the mothers as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. We're gonna take a really quick break, and then we're gonna come back. It's not gonna be long, so stay tuned. For anyone, and I'm gonna let Sid come up, that is looking for insurance, Sid can get you life insurance. She does more than life insurance if you're in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I think Sid, it's a few more states. You can tell them. Sid can get you, if you have been denied, she will get you approved.
In North Carolina too. That's it.
Okay. All right,
That's
North Carolina too. So
it.
yeah, so reach out to Sid. If you have any questions, you can reach directly out to her. You can email Demetria at unfilteredunspoken.com. We will get you to Sid. She can get you life. It's very, very, very important. It's so many folks losing their life with no insurance, and the family is left with the burden. You have a beautiful young lady over here that can get you some insurance.
Absolutely. And just in reference to what we're talking about, those policies have cash values depending on how long you had them. If you ever are in a case where you do need to fight for custody of your child, or you need a lump sum of money to check yourself into a rehab center, anything, um, you can pull from it tax free, tax penalty free. It is great, and it's great for the lifeline of our legacies, putting your children in place for where they need to be, where you would want them to be, giving them a head start that the others have that we don't have. So look into it, y'all. I'm not going to force it down your throat what you should have, because you know you should have it. But I'm here when you're ready to talk about it. Okay. All right.
All right. So kick it off, Sid. Let's get into it.
Yes.
Yeah, let's
Um,
get into it.
Now, and I do apologize. I might have missed it in your initial introduction, but in regards to your addiction, what was your drug of choice?
Cocaine.
All right.
Well,
And
I was raised around it. My father used it, and I never used it until I was a full grown adult. But that was my drug of choice.
all right. And how, oh, I'm sorry. That was, you
what
just
did
answered
you
that
say it
question.
was? What was it?
Cocaine.
Cocaine.
Cocaine. Okay.
Hmm. And I'm sorry, you did say, you were around it a lot, but what was your kind of initial ride with it? What made you want to want to try? Like, I mean, for instance, I was around weed and cigarettes all my life, very very common. But a lot of it I didn't try want to try until adulthood. I wasn't interested until then. So what was that turning point that made you want to try it out?
When I hit rock bottom, when I was low, about the time my 12-year-old was born, I was disabled to the point I couldn't work, and that affected my self esteem. And that compounded with the mental illness and the stress of a marriage and the stress of the economy. And how can I say this diplomatically? Well, I'm just going to say it, messed up relationships with the in laws and a lot of interference. I sought something that I thought would dull the pain. I sought something that I thought would be a panacea for my problems, and for a while, I was deluded enough to think that it was. I thought it was working. I thought it was all I needed. As long as I had that, I can deal with anything. At the point, I realized I was killing myself, and I was limiting my own potential by not addressing that addiction and my mental illness. So it was basically used to help dull the pain, to help make things go away, and it would temporarily, but it got to where this is the point where I realized I need to make a change. When it got to the point where when I would do it, I would feel worse afterwards. It's like, nah, George, you got to make a change. So you have to hit that point of recovery, because we oftentimes try to drag people to recovery. You have people that have been in rehab 5, 6 times and it doesn't take, and you wonder why. It's because they're not ready. And you can't make them get ready for you, because you can let them down. They have to get sick of themselves and do it. So it may take 13 times, but it might be their 14th time they're ready. But you can't drag people to God. You can't drag people to rehab. You have to let them walk their own journey, as hard as that may be, because you don't know what God has planned for them. And sometimes you have to be there and be supportive and do your part and urge and support. But at the end of the day, that person, whether they have a mental illness or not, is accountable for their own actions. Unless you have a severe illness, something like schizophrenia or something like that, then there's an opportunity to try to get them help. But if you can manage, you're responsible. Be responsible, because once you do take accountability and you start to see a change, that gives you a sense of pride. People that have really beat addiction have a certain ego about. We have a certain ego about ourselves because we beat something that most people can't beat.
Mm.
So, and we're compelled to help others because we know what this like. So, but I was basically using it just to dull the pain, to self-medicate.
Mhm. So can you tell the audience? Can you give them some tips on how to overcome an addiction, to heal, some strategies to, you know, have a better life without drugs? It doesn't. It's bigger than that. It'll take you under, but
Yeah.
how do you come back up?
First of all, and this may sound cliched, but admit that you have a problem, and address what's causing it. Trauma is the cause of a lot of drug addiction. Unresolved trauma, secrets, pain, things that we don't deal with that are generational. And also our actions, bad choices we make, deal with those issues, deal with that trauma, sever bad relationships, foster good supportive relationships, and that'll help you avoid addiction, because you have to do that in the process of recovery anyway. Um, Build yourself up from the bottom, strip yourself down, and build yourself up brick by brick, because you have to become a new you. And you'll find that new you is the real you. But you have to be brave and work at it and take accountability for it. And don't feel shame for what you're going through. You know, I mean, everyone goes through something, but you have to get a handle on it, and you have to really deal with it, and you can't run from it. And you can't expect anybody else to do it for you. No one else can walk their journey with you. It's on you.
The truth, the absolute truth. Now, what about? I'm not sure if you ever tried anything else, experimented with anything else, but um, I guess what about cocaine matched with what it is that you were trying to fill in that void versus any other drug?
It was accessible. It was what I was familiar with. It didn't have the stigma of other things. um, it was readily available in my neighborhood. I mean, it's so. I mean, even now, my neighborhood I was living in at the time. Uh, if I were to walk that neighborhood now, I would see cut up straws everywhere. I'd see little baggies with white residue everywhere. It's really common, which is funny because I live, it's not. I don't live in an economically thriving neighborhood, so cocaine ain't cheap. So with that comes a lot of petty larceny with people. Now I've never done anything, but I see how it affects the community to this day. But it's just what was accessible. It was just the choice of the crowd that I fell into at the time.
Okay. Because sometimes, depending on the type of high it gives you is, that's the one you kind of cling to. So,
Yeah, I liked it because I think because it kind of imitated the manic part, and sometimes the manic part can feel good to you, and I think it kind of stimulated that part of it. I think that's why I did it.
hmm.
Um, but um, Yeah, that's really. I think. And thank you for asking me that because I just realized something about myself. I think that's why I did it. It mimicked the manic highs that you can become addicted to with bipolarism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's just, I don't know how I think about certain stuff, but I don't know how I come up with it, but I come up with it. Um, Now, was your use always kind of consistent, prolonged, or were you with it when you were on your lows or on your highs? Like how did that work? Were you on it when you were feeling a little bit better, or off it when you were feeling a little bit better? What was it, a pattern? Did you see a pattern with that, or you just addicted?
About about a good 4 or 5 years is just consistent use, maybe every other day, um, just to keep myself going. I mean, I was in a marriage that was breaking down. My health was breaking down. It had my work, all my, I lost both my parents. Estrangement from family. So that was really that I really held on to that as the only thing that would bring me joy other than my children.
Wow.
So I was really dependent on it. I think with cocaine is more of a psychological addiction than a physical one.
Hmm.
So being psychologically broken, I was vulnerable, and I made that choice because addiction is a choice. You make the choice to sit. And now there. Let me preface that by saying this: there are factors that go into that, such as genetics, such as environment. I know all that. But when you use a drug, you make the choice to get the money. You go through the trouble of making a call. You go through the trouble of going to meet somebody or have somebody meet you. All those are choices. Those are steps.
I am glad that you're being very transparent about this because a lot of folks make excuses about this.
Mhm.
So, doing drugs is a choice.
It's a choice. It is a choice. It is a choice. People want to argue with this disease. I don't. It's a choice because, like I said, it's a process, and you become addicted to the ritual of doing it. You become addicted to making the call, having the guy answer, waiting on them, getting the money. All that ties into the use of it. So when you break addiction, you have to break yourself from those rituals too, because you'll find yourself kind of doing the same thing with different things. People don't really get over
I,
addiction; they just transpose them to other things. So the you have to take the behavior of addiction and turn it into something positive because there's a good chance that behavior, that psychosis, that urge will never go away. But you have to move it to something that's going to be, productive and positive and healthy for yourself.
And I had an uncle, and I asked him. We were very close. Rest his soul. And it's not common. Everybody knows that he had a bad drug addiction, but we were close. So him and I actually, I would conversate about to him about the drug addiction. And I asked him one time. I said, "Why did you get on drugs?" And he was young, and he had so many folks condoning to his drug habit that wasn't addicts, but they were supporting his habits and not making him accountable. So also those that have drug addictions and folks that are covering up for them, you have to make them accountable for their actions. But I asked him a question. I said, "Why?" And he told me someone told he was serving someone because he used to sell drugs. And he said he said, "Why do you do this?" And they told him, "Why don't you just you should just try it." That's why. And his curiosity killed the cat, and that's how he got addicted.
Right, right. And there's so many ways to get addicted, and that's why one thing you hear me say constantly is everything ties into mental health. Everything, everything we do, everything in our culture, everything in our society, the things that ail us as a diaspora can be tied back to mental health, and much of it is generational. But we're seeing that now, and we're starting to have discussions about things and trauma that we were not having even 5 years ago, and it's extremely encouraging. So, like I said, I want to thank you all again for having me on and discussing this.
Absolutely. You've been extremely resourceful and open with a lot. We really ain't even had to ask you much. You kept it going. I like that. You're just very informational and just kind of uncensored. And then a lot of people need that. For one, to understand that it's okay, and two, just to understand other people are going through it as well. And it's just awesome to see. So we, just as much as you're appreciative as us bringing you on, we're appreciative of you being here. So thank you.
And I'm guided by faith, and I feel as though all I have to offer the world, all we have to offer the world is our testimony, and hope that we somehow uh, encourage other people, and that's all we have. We're all selling our testimony. The guy who made the mousetrap, that was his testimony. Want to know why? Because he wanted to get rid of a mouse. That was a story. So we all have our testimony. It just conveys itself in different ways, and this is just the way that mine matriculated.
Very much so. Now, in regards to I get your, existing health issues, things that you're going through now. For one, were they, a direct reflection of your addiction, or it just is natural causes?
Natural cause. I was born with them. I was born with heart defects. I was came down with diabetes at age 9. Insulin dependent. My body makes no insulin, so I mean I'm on probably about 17 different medications every day, and this including the meds I need for my bipolar and other issues and my health issues. So some days it's rough. I'm working a heavy advocacy case here, trying to resolve some things and get a young man some help. And sleep has been sparse, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice to help people. Um, I feel as though I will be blessed in the end, uh, and I'm blessed now because I feel good doing it. I wouldn't do it if this was not my purpose and my heart.
Hmm.
So I sacrifice a lot to do it. I sacrifice a lot time wise, family wise, especially financially. But running a nonprofit where you don't get donations and you don't get grants and you're just doing it out of pocket, and to keep it going 4 years through a pandemic, that means you're in it.
I know
So
the feeling. Trust
yeah,
me.
so I'm committed to it, and I love doing it.
And I have a question before we go because we're right at it, and this has been so good. I feel like, I mean, we can keep going, but I just want to know because you speak heavy about incarcerations. So I have a two question in one. First, I want to know: have you ever been incarcerated? Because I know you talk about a lot about the mental health issues with folks getting thrown in jail without the appropriate help, and then once they're released, they're thrown in the streets back into society without the help, and they need help and assistance, but they're pretty much set up going back into society because they haven't addressed the mental issues that they're going through, and they're not giving them the correct medications for those that are going through the mental issues.
Uh, well, I've never been arrested, never been in any legal trouble, have a clean record. But my father went through a period of incarceration. The guys that I was hanging with when I was rock bottom, uh, I look back at them through my recovery and I realized a lot of them have been incarcerated, and I think it's had a lingering effect. And I suspect that many of them may have had or may have some underlying mental health issues that aren't addressed in jail. And being incarcerated is traumatic within itself. So you add the the poor conditions in many penitentiaries and many prisons and many jails, and the fact that people aren't getting access to adequate care or therapy, then you release them, you put them on the street. Not only do they already have the stigma of being incarcerated to carry and try to be successful, they have the trauma of being incarcerated and no transitional care, especially in terms of mental health. So it's not fair to expect. Well, yeah, it's not fair to expect people to be successful when you have barriers in the way, and not providing adequate mental care is a barrier. So I feel as though we need to try to do better, because people that are incarcerated come back in the community. They're mothers and fathers just like us. So if we want our communities to be better, we have to fight recidivism, and that's my way, and that's my contribution to doing it. And I was actually involved in my prison ministry at my church for a long time, and getting back involved with it. So I got a chance to talk to a lot of prisoners and hear their stories, and get their narratives. And that's what really shapes what I do. I'm shaped by what I encounter with people, conversations I have with people. So I'm not just a person up here saying something with no real basis to stand on. I've had these conversations. I've been in these situations, and I try to use my life experience and my testimony to benefit people.
And you definitely do. And it looks like you are definitely doing it. So, with that being said, at this point, we like to call this the shameless plug. So, anything that you have going on, anything that you would like to direct our viewers to, upcoming projects, um, endeavors, anything. This is where you share it, and let the people know how they can contact you and utilize your resources.
Sure. As I briefly mentioned earlier, doing a men's support group on Facebook called Meta Men's Mentality. Please join. We're going to be doing like an online support group on Zoom or StreamYard soon. We're getting that set up. I'm working on the co-parenting program with my board of directors of my nonprofit for this particular school. We're going to use it as sort of a pilot program and maybe take it national. Um, I'm also in the middle of a fundraising drive. I basically use Cash App. I find most people have it. It's the quickest way for us to get donations. You can donate at $ Meta Association, METTA Association. And I'm available for public speaking. You can reach me. My office number is 214-810-6518. You can contact me directly. I answer the phone. You might call at 3 in the morning with a crisis, and I may answer and help you. I'll get back with you. And our site is www.metaassociation.org. That's METTA association.org. We have information about our nonprofit, videos, things like that, information about what we have coming on, and ways for you to support and help us.
Well, you heard him. You heard him. Go to all them places. Most importantly, donate to the Cash App. Donate to the Cash App.
Yeah.
George posts in our Good Fight group a lot, so he is not hard to find. If you do need to use something for reference, George P. Brooks, he is in the group as George P. Brooks. So you make sure y'all go support some way, somehow. If you can't do it monetarily, please share anything that he has going on, just to get the word out and maybe push anybody to his way. So,
Right.
Demetria, you can take it on.
All right, boo. So again, please visit George's website at www.mettaassociation.org. Please check George out. That is his nonprofit. He is active in the Memphis and Texas area, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Memphis and Dallas. But I will go anywhere, especially for public speaking.
He will go
I'm getting,
anywhere.
yeah, anywhere I'm needed. I've helped people as far away as Africa, as the UK. I've gotten calls from the people in the UK. I've been on several shows in the UK. I will travel anywhere. If you need me, if you want me to come speak in any church, civic function, whatever, I'm available. All you have to do is reach out.
There you go. You got it. And I think George will be a wonderful resource. Please, if you're on Facebook, follow him as a friend, George P. He isn't Paul Brooks. Follow him. He is heavy, very transparent about mental illness and other issues. So definitely please check him out. And if you're able, like he said, 50 cents, $1, $5, whatever you want to donate to support the cause to help with mental illnesses and the groundwork that he's doing, Cash App, $METTA Association. I'll spell it out. METTA ASSOC CIATION, Meta Association. Please check George out. We're gonna have him. He actively, like Sid said, posts in the Good Fight, and we have a private group, Unfiltered Unspoken Society of Survivors. We just created.
Mm-hmm.
So please check George out, and we're gonna wrap it up. It's a few key things that George brought to the table, and I hope many of you were listening to what he said, because he spit a lot of important knowledge, especially to my brothers, especially to those going through mental illnesses, especially those that are going through custody struggles with a child. George put it all on the table today. So freedom of speech does not make you free of repercussion. Don't forget it. We can say things. This is for our youth, and we're trying to, make it very transparent to shape you. And overcoming drugs, you have to admit to your problem. A drug is by choice. Stop making excuses. It is your choice to create an addiction, and it's your choice to want to overcome that addiction. Far as relationships, like we said before, keep others out of your relationship. Focus on your family and the things that you're doing in your relationship. And sometimes we outgrow our relationships. George, I want to thank you for coming on to Unfiltered Unspoken. You were definitely a blessing to have. I thank you for your transparency, and thank you for tuning in. And of course, we're going to keep bringing life experiences to you so that you can share with others. You can overcome life experiences. You can acknowledge that you're going through something, because we are all of us that are on this screen are on the mission to help others face their traumas that they are going through. Right. So thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken.
Thank you. Everybody stay blessed. Have a good night.
Have a good night.